Hello. So these two episodes, I believe, I had previously seen. Um, yes, they're. It's so interesting the little things, and I know I'm a broken record when I say this because I've said it now about this and all the other uh, episodes of all the other shows that I've done these useless YouTube videos for. But it's just so interesting. I'll be watching it. I'll think, well, no, no, no. Oh, there, that split second, that, those three words, that suddenly all of it comes flooding back. So I'll just go right into it. The fire ghost. Um, Not the same as a frozen ghost because the frozen ghost, or even an equivalent opposite, the frozen ghost was the ghost of a human being who had frozen to death. The fire ghost, it turns out, is the ghost of fire. I'll get to that. So at the beginning, we got some sparks flying, shall we say, between some of our favorites. We got Kiki's angry at Sam because she lent Sam her favorite sweater and it was stolen out of Sam's locker. Which of the two of them, Sam has the bigger grievance. I think her locker was broken into, but Kiki's, you know, it was her favorite sweater. And then Tucker, he runs up and he trips and he spills the water. But it's his turn to tell the story, and the story's about fire, so I wonder if that was deliberate. But Gary gets angry at him, of course, because fire safety. Gary is clearly the leader. He seems to be the oldest and the most responsible. So, but, Tucker does his pre-story spiel, and it amounts to fire is dangerous, which again, that's why Gary's upset that Tucker spilled the water that they're supposed to use to douse the fire. Um, so let's see. So it takes place in a firehouse, this story. The kids are Jimmy and Roxy, and their dad is a firefighter, and it's his birthday, or well, there's a surprise party. So we see at the beginning people lighting candles, and it's all in the dark, and then the fire alarm goes off, and then he's up there in bed, and he's goes down the pole, and he thinks, I gotta go fight a fire, and then everyone turns on the light and says, surprise, and that might not be the best use of a fire alarm, but is an interesting beginning to the story. Now, he is divorced from Jimmy and Roxy's mother. Jimmy and Roxy are not happy about that, although Jimmy is more angrily not happy about that. And but there's the usual, you didn't come to the ball game. Well, I'm going to try to break to spend more time with you, and we'll have more equity of time between the parents. All that sort of. This is where the kids are at this time, and in this environment. And it's a windy, stormy night, which is nice for a creepy story. And a tree breaks a window at the firehouse that Jimmy happens to be sitting near because he's sitting away from everyone because he's unhappy, and it cuts his hand. So that's his father's bandaging his hand when they have this conversation about, well, I'm going to spend more time with you, I promise. And then there's a real fire. Their mom takes off before that, but then there's a real fire, and so their dad leaves along with the rest of the firehouse. And then there is a blackout because, again, it's stormy. That probably the storm caused the fire. Maybe it was lightning. I don't know. At this point, we meet Jake Griffin, who says he watches the house. He's an older fireman. He says he watches the firehouse when the others have gone. And he tells them the story of what a fire ghost is, which is when he says the fire never dies, but it seeks revenge on whoever put it out, which is to say firefighters. This seems like just a silly ghost story at the time. And it's a weird, silly ghost story to tell to kids of a firefighter because it means their dad is in danger from a ghost of a flame. He says, if you look in the candle flame, then that's how the fire ghost passes into this world. If you look right into the flame. So that's the lore of a fire ghost, which turns out to be a very scary thing. So the kids are up on the second floor of the firehouse, and they're in the beds because they're got to stay there because they have to be safe. And then Jimmy notices, and they have their biting argument about their parents, and this is what happens uh, with siblings sometimes amidst divorces and all the unhappiness. Um, and they have their little argument, and then Roxy kind of puts a pillow, I think, over her head so that she's like kind of like I'm out, I'm not in the world anymore, leave me alone. And Jimmy notices a fiery glow from below, so he goes down the pole carrying a candle, because again the power's gone out, the phone's gone out, and then he puts the candle down. He's going to investigate. Now the fiery glow has moved to the equipment closet, but then the candle flame gets huge, and Jimmy, kind of startled, he looks back at it. He can't help but look directly at it because it's the strange thing. This little candle has a huge flame on top of it. And that is what Jack Griffin told him not to do. Jake Griffin. Not Jack Griffin, Jake Griffin. Then the phone rings, but it's supposed to be still dead. And Roxy comes downstairs as well, or down pole, as it were, and she's there. And the phone is still dead, but there's somebody on the other end says to Jimmy, "You're the son of a murderer, and now soon it will be your turn." And while this is happening, the equipment door opens and a hose comes out, kind of hooks around Jimmy's leg to pull him in. And that looked a little familiar to me, but what did it was then one of the fire uniforms, the coats and the helmets, raised an axe, and there's a hand holding the axe. Are You Afraid of the Dark doesn't have that good of a special effects budget, at least not in the 90s. But it's fine. It's still really creepy that we've seen the row of uniforms, and now suddenly one of them is raising an axe, and the kid's just been grabbed by the hose. And and that is what did it. That image of the fire uniform raising the axe, that's when I thought, yes, I have seen this one. And the uniform then cuts the hose so that it lets go of Jimmy, and the uniform reveals itself to have Jake, and Jake admits that yes, he's a ghost. He used to be one of the firemen, and now he's a ghost, and he keeps the firehouse safe from fire ghosts. But he tells the kids, "You got to escape." So they try going out a window, and then they are caught by a police officer. And they try to tell the police officer, they broke the window to get out, and the police officer says, "You're saying there's somebody in there?" And they say yes, and so he goes in with them, and kind of says things like, "Well, you have to go into the equipment room there. I don't want you wandering around while I look around for whoever's in here." But it doesn't get that far because he reveals himself to be the fire ghost, which is a kind of burnt, like a gray face but red eyes, and he's constantly smoking, black sweater, and he says, "Welcome to my parlor." At least it sounds like parlor. I'm not exactly sure what it is he actually says. I don't know if parlor is a word for firehouse, but in any case, what he's doing is he's doing Freddy Krueger. And I know this because I just watched all 8 Freddy Krueger movies of the Robert Englund Freddy Krueger movies. And that's Welcome to My Nightmare, and this is Welcome to My Parlor. So it's a very good, well-used reference because Freddy Krueger also famously burned. Then Jake Griffin comes along, he saves the kids, pulls them to the side, and he tells Jimmy, since Jimmy released the fire ghost, he has to be the one to stop it. And then he also reveals that he was working with their father to save an old woman from a burning building, and then Jake went back into the building, and that's how he died and became a ghost. And that he's been trying to keep that fire, I guess, from that building at bay. So Jimmy then lures the ghost out into the open, and Roxy sprays the ghost with the fire extinguisher, but it doesn't work. And then Jimmy starts, and then they're all cornered, and Jake Griffin can't do anything. He's a ghost. The kids seem to be out of options, and the ghost is being all threatening. But then Jimmy begs the ghost not to turn into fire because he says he's afraid of fire. And the ghost says, "Oh, I'm going to scare you so much." And he turns into fire, which triggers the sprinkler, which douses him, and he's got nowhere to go because the sprinkler's everywhere. And that is what ultimately undoes the ghost. And then we're back out in the Midnight Society. Well, the firefighters come back, and their dad says, "What happened here? The broken window, and the sprinklers, and you wouldn't believe us if we told you something like that." Then we're back out to the Midnight Society. Sam says that before they started fighting about it, she was planning to give Kiki some money to buy a new sweater because she felt bad. Because, it's a decent thing to do. Even though, again, Sam was violated as well. Her locker was, I wonder what else was stolen. And then they become friends again. Kiki says, only half the cost because it's not totally your fault. And then Gary and Tucker are left with the fire. And Gary says, "So what are we going to do now?" And Tucker says, "Just throw dirt on it, because that is another way to put out a fire." And so it all works out. And the brothers reconcile and the friends reconcile. And so that's the tale of the fire ghost. The tale of the closet keepers is at once more interesting and less interesting, because the main protagonist is deaf. And there's very little sign language because none of the other characters understand sign language, with the possible exception of one who's not in it for very long. But that was pointed out by the malevolent supernatural force I live with, who is a sign language enthusiast, even though she is not deaf. And she has tried teaching me, and I used to know the alphabet pretty well. I know some, and some is taught in the episode, which is nice. So it was interesting for that reason. It's just a not as interesting lore or tale or whatever. But Kiki is the one who tells the story. And so the kind of opens with Betty Ann running up to this circle of the Midnight Society and saying, "You're not going to believe this," or something like that. And then Kiki comes. And Kiki usually dresses as a tomboy, usually got the baseball hat, the baggy clothes, the hoodie, but looking like she could play sports or something, that she's not going to a dance. She arrives in a dress, and her hair is all done nice. And it's a bit theatrical, as like something Rachel would do. And she says, "I dress like this to make a point, which is that people have more than one side," which suggests that it's not just for this story that she does this, that maybe this is how she dresses for church, or she's got some other hobby that requires her to dress like this, and she doesn't mind dressing like this, but mostly she wants to dress the other way that she dresses. So her emphasis is that people have more than one side. And her main character is named Stacy. She says Stacy is smart, funny, pretty, better at basketball than anybody else, but she's not popular, she's not well liked because she's deaf. And the main other kid, Billy, who is a bully, he's a bully named Billy, says that she can't be on the team because the team won't win if they have to make special arrangements for her because she's deaf. And he doesn't specify what the arrangements are, but it doesn't really need to, because that's the general leave them out of it attitude with anyone who is differently abled. We have to make special accommodations, therefore we can't include them. So it doesn't have to be specific. The point is, either you shouldn't have a problem with that, or you actually don't really. That it's not that big an issue, it only looks like a big issue. And that is what he learns, of course, throughout the course of the episode. So let's see. She can't be on the team because of that. Okay. And when she seems to be very good at lip reading, which often deaf characters on TV are, and I think often deaf people are in life, because they really have very little choice, because, as mentioned, very few people know sign language. I'm trying to learn. I struggle with all languages except for my native one, but we should all strive in that way. We did watch, also just small tangent, we watched Police Story 2, which is one of Jackie Chan's early Chinese movies, and so there's a deaf character in that as well, and so we got to see a bit of Chinese sign language, which is apparently different than American Sign Language. Again, I'm learning. I don't know. but the malevolent supernatural force knows. Anyway, so when she is told she can't be on the team, and she kind of runs off, and they, I guess, chase her a little bit, and she finds herself in a strange building. She just goes inside to escape. She wants to be alone, and while she's in this strange building, a couple of weirdos wearing suits go out of the building. They come down. They're looking all fancy, and they leave the building after saying, essentially, no losers. And don't know really what that means in the moment, and she obviously doesn't hear it, but then she goes up the stairs that they came down from because she wants to investigate. There's kind of a weird glow. There's always a weird glow. And she finds this kind of elevator that spins around and has walls that look a lot like the Krista in Space Cases. And then she enters a big room that doesn't really look like the Krista, but there's more Space Cases comparisons to be made. It's got a big map on it and a bunch of silvery orb furniture type stuff and tables. And then she, let's see, she's kind of, hides when people come by, and she sees a couple more guys in black suits come down, and they press it's a map of the Earth, but it's flat. They press England on the map, and so it seems like they're going to England. And she accidentally knocks something over, and so they see her, and then they point a device at her. It looks like a gun, but it makes, I guess, uses sound waves, irritating sounds, as it's to subdue the people that it's pointed at. And this, of course, does not work on her because she cannot hear. And one of the aliens, I'm going to say, or robot aliens, or robots, says, malfunction, and the other one says, negative, you missed her. And that was where I recognized the episode. That line, negative, you missed her. That just kind of sassy delivery. Like, you always do this. So that was fun, that realization. And then it started to be a bit more familiar. I recognized other things. The guys in suits that we first saw, the ones who were going to England, they put on derbies. I guess you push where you're going, and then it provides hatwear that's appropriate to the place where you're going. So they put on derbies, and they went to England after they caught her, after she found the place where all the kids are imprisoned. And they take her to this cell-like bedroom. Like it looks like a kid's bedroom, but most stuff is painted on the wall, so it's more of a cell. It's a cage for an animal. And we find out that it's for a zoo. The kids are now in a zoo. It's a zoo full of kids for aliens and alien robots from the looks of the things that come to the windows to see them. And it's a lot like the Space Cases plot where Bova becomes an exhibit at an amusement park. So that's the other Space Cases connection. The zookeeper monologues at Stacy and then assumes that she's dumb as in unintelligent rather than dumb as in can't speak, because she doesn't seem to understand, and he doesn't understand, she just didn't hear him. He demonstrates that they use sound for security, so if you try to get out, loud, obnoxious noise. And that bothers most people, but again, doesn't bother her. The bully, Billy, is captured by the two guys we saw leave before, and he's brought back, and, he kind of thrashes around because that's the kind of kid he is, not listening to her. She's been there a while, she's learned a few things, but he's not interested because he assumes that he can't even communicate with her, that she is less powerful, important as far as getting out than he is. Meanwhile, the zookeeper senses that there's something different about her, and he says she's got to be eliminated. I think he's starting to get the idea that she's not susceptible to their main weapon of suppression. And both Billy and Stacy have also figured out that she can escape, but she doesn't because she wants to help everyone else. So they develop a few ideas. They they decide they can also, I guess it's some kind of invisible laser is what triggers the sound alarm that hurts their heads. So they decide to use mirrors to trick the lasers and get out without triggering the sound. Um, and then they find their way to the other kids. They let the other kids out, um, and during this time, she also says she wants to save the other kids, and she tells Billy the bully that she wants to save him too. Now that he's there, she doesn't want to just escape herself. She wants to save everybody. So they do the mirror trick. They free the kids. They use the map to return each stolen kid around the world. And meanwhile, the door to the map room is being held by they put a long, I don't know what it is, but it's one of those doors where like this is the door, then this is the way to open it. So it's a hook. They put the thing through the hook so the door can't be opened out. And it's very, very primitive trick to play on aliens and robots. So they return all the kids. The last one goes to England, but she didn't have an English accent, but she did look like an English schoolgirl. So there's that. The schoolkeeper grabs Billy and says, "You won't be affected by the sound ray, but he will," and which keeps her from doing her thing. And Billy says, "No, go for it," and covers his ears. And she sets off the main alarm, and the zookeeper collapses because he can't handle it either. And then they escape the building. The zookeeper says, "I'll get you," so they don't really kill him, but they defeat him. They escape the building. All the kids are gone. I suppose maybe we can assume that then the business goes under and the zookeeper is in debt or whatever. His life is ruined, so he doesn't have to die necessarily, but he seemed less defeated than usual. Like he could still come after her. But I guess we can assume he doesn't, because they both leave the building, and then Billy says he doesn't know how to say thank you, and she teaches him the sign for thank you. And that's the beginning of Billy learning that it actually is not hard to communicate with people who are different than you. That's those two episodes. The next two I am excited for because, of course, The Tale of the Unfinished Painting is Jewel Staite's return to the series as a different character. And then The Tale of Train Magic, which I'm pretty sure I remember just from the title, features Gregory Smith, who, if I just put the cursor over his name, says he played Alan Abernathy in Small Soldiers, which is one of my very favorite 90s children's movies, live-action children's movies from the 90s. It's up there with Harriet the Spy and Fly Away Home and Jumanji. And like Jumanji, it also features Kirsten Dunst. So that's that for now. Pleasant dreams, everyone.